Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I had a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I
Good.
am having a great week, and I'm happy to be here. Shockingly delightful, and being able to talk with all of you amazing, wonderful people. How about you?
Absolutely. I've been having a great time watching my boys play hockey, and they're doing their thing. So it has been a joy to watch. So that's been the highlight of my last few weeks.
Very, very cool. Well,
Yeah.
I am Michelle with Moksha Grace Coaching, and I am an emotional liberation coach. And that means that I help people take back control of their emotions and manage them, come to terms with them, get friendly with them. So that way their emotions don't run rampant in the wrong situations and control you. So that's what I do.
And I'm Krista Barone with Wicked Wisdom Consulting. I'm a fractional COO and operations consultant, and I help business owners get back to doing what they love and living their purpose by taking on all of the operational stuff that they don't want to or like to do.
And with all of that being said, we're also mother daughter, and we have lots of opinions and different opinions as well. And we like to talk with y'all and just share our thoughts about different things. What resonates with you, take. What doesn't, you can leave behind. That's quite all right. And definitely make sure to share us out to anyone that you feel needs to hear this conversation.
And
What
it's
are we
going to be
talking?
a fun one today. We are talking about my way or the highway, aka those lovely, wonderful spiritual gurus who are insistent that their way, their method, their technique is the absolute only way that you should be operating. It's the only way to enlightenment. It's the only way to 5D. It's the only way to grow as a human being, to be a good human being. And why that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Everyone talks about the path to enlightenment, but that doesn't mean that there's only one path.
Yep.
And also, it means that you're not supposed to be going out there and corralling people and dragging them down a path that might not be right for them.
I think that's called a cult. Um,
Yes.
well, I guess maybe the cult would be that you convince them to come with you willingly versus
Right.
dragging them along. Though I'm sure there's people that get dragged along in the process of joining a cult as well.
Yes. And if that's your way, then that's okay. Oh, that was a rhyme. Didn't mean it.
Well, I don't know if there's ever been a good cult, so I don't know about that either. But if that's your
Well,
choice, do your thing.
right. That's
That's
what I'm
cool.
saying. Like everyone has choices, like I always say, and you
Absolutely.
can choose to be a part of this path, that path, or the other path. It's all what's important is what's in your heart, and are
Mhm.
you doing it? Are you doing it out of fear? Are
Yeah.
you joining into a uh
Ideology.
thank you, an ideology because of fear,
Hmm.
or are you doing it out of love, out of something that just feels right? And of course, in order to know that, you have to be in touch with yourself.
Right. Quick shout out to my girls on Etsy. I believe it's pronounced Mesare because it's a combination of their name, ceramic. They make the most beautiful earthenware mugs with different animals and stuff on them. Check them out on Etsy. They're awesome. I'll see if I can post the link in the comments. They have all sorts of really amazing, beautiful designs. I've been buying their stuff for years. But anyway, back to the show.
No
Um,
commercial there.
yeah, sorry. I just love to shout out
I
the different
know they're
companies that I love and support them any way that I can. They have really great Christmas stuff too. I'm sorry. Back to the topic at hand. Um, I totally agree with you. You know, it's everyone's choice what they want to do, but you
Mhm.
know, the thing with the type of individuals that we're talking about today and cult leaders is they're very convincing, persuasive, charming. You know, they know how to say the right things. They usually, you know, are familiar with how human beings and our minds work, and so they know how to use different strategies to kind of like get you on board. And a lot of the times it's not even conscious either. And that's the real tricky thing,
Yeah.
is a lot of these people really truly believe that what they're saying, they're doing it from a good place, but it's being executed in a way that it's so sneaky, but it's still manipulative. It's still, it can be manipulative. It can
Very
be
much so.
troubling. It can be very restrictive. And there tends to be a lot of ego that goes along with it.
Oh, absolutely, because especially if you have to like get members or something like that, then, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Well,
Uh
let's separate from the cult thing, because we're not talking about
yeah.
cults today. We're talking about just like in general, whether
Well,
it's a coach, whether it's a YouTube, an influencer,
well,
YouTuber,
that's what I was thinking.
whoever.
Like the Patreons and stuff. Like are they doing it for love? Are they doing it out of fear? Are they doing it out of ego to get more subscribers or what have you?
Hmm.
Um and I find it very interesting because um there's so many different ways to think and believe and to look at this, and it's all about discernment.
Hmm. Yes.
And I go back to, we have to know ourselves. We have to
Right.
be in touch with our intuition.
Hmm.
We have to be in touch with our flavor of divine, God, whatever, but you have to be in touch. And something that is a very strong belief for me is that you have to know your values.
Hmm.
Because if you're joining in with somebody, following along their path,
Hmm.
are you being asked to do something that goes against your values? Is there something about it that rubs you wrong or just feels off, or
Hmm.
you're just not sure? You know, Jumping out of your comfort zone is very different than intuitively feeling like this is against my values. This is against the grain. There's
Yeah.
something not right.
Well, and I think that's the easier version of it, where you can, get that little instinct of that doesn't seem right. But a lot of times also is, a lot of people who follow and who love these people do so a little bit blindly, and so they're not, they end up themselves not even open to any sort of criticism, feedback,
Hmm.
whatever. But they're also, you tend to get wrapped up into this person when you are desperate for a path, desperate for a way, desperate for a light, just struggling to figure out which way is right for you, is when you can very easily get wrapped up in people like this. Because it is typically in this mindset, it's someone who is very loud and proud about their method and their way of doing things.
Hmm.
And so it can feel like, oh, well, they have such a clear path to this. Of,
Hmm.
of course, this is going to work for me. I love this. This is just a clear A to B. But it very rarely is, because all of us are humans and all of us are a little bit different. You could have the same, like me, I'm a childhood cancer survivor. Not a single other childhood cancer survivor is exactly like me. I went to camp as a teenager. I'm well aware there are no other childhood cancer survivors who are exactly like me. And so even if there was someone who was boasting about, they have the way, they know the way to do things for childhood cancer survivors, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for me. And I probably guarantee that it wouldn't. And then that's where it comes in of, like, you really have to be aware, like you were saying, of, your own internal guidance and the feelings that come over you, because even if something sounds great,
Hmm.
your internal guidance will let you know, and you have to be able to listen to it, and usually it's very subtle. When I have meetings with people, networking, when I meet with potential clients, whatever it is, I know, and you can contest to this fact, I'll get off a call and immediately know if I'm going to have a long-term partnership with this person. I know instantly from the moment I meet them how the rest of the relationship's going to go.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't listen and I move forward anyway, because we're all human, and I have those moments of, well, maybe I'm wrong. Let me give them the benefit of the
Right.
doubt. So far, I'm 10 for 10. And
Yeah.
that's a totally made up number. I just mean 100% accurate, because I've honed in on what that little feeling is, at least in these situations. Other situations, no, because I'm still learning. I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm not saying I'm perfect. But when you can really practice in
Mhm.
those sorts of situations, you can really feel it out. What has your experience been?
No, exactly the same. Like, I talk to people all the time, all day long. I'm on the phone. I've been doing that for the last 6 years, 5 years, 6 years. And there were times that I could, and you remember this, I would look at the calendar and read a name and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be working with that person.
Yeah.
Just because I had just had this feeling. It wasn't anything else other than an intuitive nudge
Yeah.
that there's something about this name that
Mhm.
is it we're going to connect, or there's something. And my favorite thing to do is when I'm on the phone with somebody and I know I can tell that we're totally connected and we're vibing,
Mhm.
is I take notes long the old fashioned way on paper. I'll write down like a word, like I think like, oh, this is a note, and then the
Mhm.
person will say the same word
That's awesome.
after I've written it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you're like, I'm so like we're connected, like,
Yeah.
you know, and and that's when those feelings those nudges, the hits that you get from wherever, the universe, spiritually, when you can tap into that and it so well, then that's when you can use it in your discernment about situations like this.
Right.
And I know we're talking about enlightenment, but it goes into, spiritual. And I know we're not going to get too deep today, but it could go into spiritual, it could get into religion, it can get into conspiracy theorists. And who are you listening to?
Yeah.
What is your heart? What is your intuition? Not your gut,
Mhm.
where fear is, but
Mhm.
your intuition and your heart. What is that saying? And does
Yeah.
it feel right? And if it doesn't feel right, then like find the back door and get out.
Yeah. And I think it would be helpful even for us to kind of talk about some of the, I'll call them red flags to look for. And this is also important when looking for a coach. I mean, Michelle and I talk extensively about this all the time about some of the coaching market is very saturated, and there's everyone, thinks that they have the answer. And what's scary is the people who are usually the loudest are the ones who are not actually delivering what they say they are or should be. And so, some things that I kind of look for, spot, keep an eye on is one of the biggest ones is the person isn't open to criticism. And
Mm,
I don't mean criticism in the sense of like just being nasty to them or like, being a troll, as people say. I mean, challenging their comments, their beliefs, their thoughts. If you challenge someone, and again, not
mhm.
aggressively, just,
Right,
well, I've always thought and believed this way, and immediately they're saying, nope, it's this way, or
right.
I'm not even going to acknowledge or even go into that. Like if they're shutting it down immediately,
Red
that's
flag.
not that's a red flag. You should be able to have open conversation. Someone who's truly interested in enlightenment and growing and in elevating themselves and becoming the best version of themselves, 5D, whatever
Right.
way of saying it you want, they are going to be constantly seeking for the right information.
Yeah.
And so if someone comes to you and says, "Oh, well, I was reading about this," if they immediately shut it down, that means they're closed off. The alternative would be, "Wow, that's really interesting. I haven't heard about that before." And then maybe they'll ponder it for a second, or you have a conversation about it. But if it's
Right.
instant shutdown,
Right.
no.
Like the way that I would respond would be, well, what about that resonates with you? Or
Right.
when you read that, think that, feel that, when you're involved in that, whatever it is, what are the feelings that come up for you? What are the emotions? And then I would go from there. And this, and you're right, because it's limiting beliefs. And yes, a good coach is going to point them out to you,
Mhm.
but in a nurturing way, sometimes a tough love way,
Mhm.
but they're not going to say like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like that,
Right.
because that's not coaching. It's, hey, what would you think if we tried it this way
Yeah.
versus that way? Or how does
Right.
this feel? Or is it possible? That's a good one. Is
Mhm.
it possible that there's another way?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And there's always this, coaches are always looking for clients to work with, and we're always making sure a lot of the times they'll do this, the discovery calls, compatibility, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of that is to make sure that the potential client is coachable.
Yeah.
Because on the other side, if you're coming into a relationship and you're like, everything the coach suggests, and you're like, I've done that. Nope, that's not going to work for me. Or nope. And you're not willing to try,
Right.
then there are some big barriers.
That's a red flag on you.
Well, yeah, that's a red flag for me, but that's also a way for, anybody
I
to
meant for the person. Like, that's their red flag, not the coaches. But yeah.
well, right. And it's listening to those red flags, or even better, look for the green flags.
Yeah.
Let
Oh, that's such a great point. We may have to do a whole other topic just on that, of how, because we totally, as a society, we are like built to look for problems and not for positives, not for green flags, not for those good things in people.
Right.
1,000%. I'm going to add that to the list right now, actually.
Yeah, because when you go into any of these conversations, you're talking to your friends or you're talking to somebody, and or they're even presenting their information. If you're feeling more negative or retraction about what they're saying, then that's the wrong path for you. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means it's the wrong path for you. But if you're feeling light, if you're feeling almost refreshed when you hang up, or when you hang up, when you're done listening to them, then that's a good path for you. That's a green flag.
Yeah.
And so we have to tap into those emotions. But of course, sometimes those pesky voices creep up.
Well, it's so perfect that you brought that up, because I had thought of something a few minutes ago, and I was going to try to figure out how I could connect it, and you did perfectly, totally in sync. Look at that. And one of the things I wanted to mention when you're talking about coaches and like if they immediately shut you down is, the other thing that kind of goes with this is, I'm definitely of the belief system, and I think you are too. It's very popular with like Abraham Hicks, where if something feels really good for you, or good to you, so like thinking a certain thought feels really good, or a certain type of activity feels really good, or a type of food, you just feel so good when you're eating it or making it, whatever, that means that you should do more of it, because it's getting you in alignment, it's getting you in the zone to be able to accept more great things coming in for you. And anyone who immediately their thought was, what if depression feels good for me? Depression doesn't feel good for you. Okay, I'm gonna nip that in the bud right now. That doesn't feel good for anybody. Okay, it may feel comfortable, but not good. We're talking about feel good in the sense of like you feel light, you feel airy, you feel on top of the world, energized, that kind of thing. If you're meeting with or talking to a coach, a guide, or whoever, and you're talking about something that makes you feel good, that makes you feel that way, and their response to it, similarly to your ideas, is, well, you really need to redirect to this, because this is the way that it works, and this is the way that you should be doing it. Red flag.
Right.
No good. Like, you need to, whoever you're going to be working with is going to be guiding you in life, in your spiritual journey. They also need to be able to shift to what you need, not what they need. So if they're operating from what they need, that's not necessarily somebody that you want to follow and listen to and bend over backwards to, like, because then it becomes, well, I shouldn't do this because they told me I shouldn't.
Right.
Well, if it feels good for you,
right,
then it doesn't matter. Like that, go with that. And I talked about it I don't know if it was the last episode or the episode before, that I had a coach once who like made fun of affirmations.
Yes.
And like setting reminders for yourself to, run through your affirmations or whatever it is, making light of it, making fun of it. And I was just sort of getting into the coaching journey. So I didn't really, I didn't know any better. And I was like, oh, to myself, I'm like, I guess I shouldn't be doing that anymore because she's making fun of it. That must mean it's like it's stupid and it doesn't work. It feels really good for me to listen to affirmations. So I'm going to listen to affirmations. And guess what? I have great results when I do that. More results than what they had suggested me to do.
Right.
And looking back now, I can recognize, oh, okay, that was something that I should have said, you know what, I appreciate that, but this is what works for me. And either that coach would have integrated it in the work that we did together, or
Mm-hmm.
that would have told me, you know what, we're probably not a right fit.
Right. Right. And there's sometimes you will meet somebody that can scare you a little bit. Like you do have a little anxiety and a little fear that comes up. And for some people, uh I kind of go like, ooh, like, what is that? Like that's kind of interesting because I like to dive into off the beaten path
Yeah.
and take the road less traveled. And but I've realized with working with coaches that honestly I've been doing that my entire life. Like
Mm,
there's been choices I've had that I could have taken an easier road,
mm-hmm.
and when I look back, I've always taken like the high, not the higher road, the more challenging road, the one that's going to bring you more
The,
expansion.
the one that's like test track from Epcot where you're launched forward versus I don't know, the
The go
carousel
karts,
of progress.
the go karts at Disney World that only go like 3 miles an hour. Those little things are like,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're a test track girly. I am a carousel of progress girly.
I'm a rock
Not
and
necessarily.
roller coaster, go 60 right out of the bat. So, but and you want whatever you're doing, whatever you're looking for, a coach, a new ideology, whatever it is, make sure that it is going to fit who you are and what you bring to the table, and where your genius zone is.
And
Like,
where you want to be, who you want to be, and where you want to go, even more so.
yes.
Because that's sort of, if people may not totally understand what that means and go, oh well, this person, because if you're just totally comfortable with the person, that's not necessarily good either, because that may mean that you end up staying in your comfort zone. So you want to look for someone that fits and speaks to where you want to be,
Right.
and who you want to be.
And is accepting and yet challenging also
Yeah.
to a point. So not go like, okay, sure, that can be your goal, even though it's like a little minute goal. You want someone that goes, okay, that's a cool first goal, but
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be your oh shit goal? You're like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing.
Yeah.
What's that goal? And then help you towards that,
Mm-hmm.
but doing it in a way where they get to know you first. I'm very different. I some may say I have ADHD. I would say that I do. And I can be all over the place, and I can be a bucking bronco when you're trying to get me focused. But then once I'm focused, I'm almost hyper focused and you have to tell me to stop. So somebody that understands that and can help coach me that way is going to be the right person for me,
Mm-hmm.
versus someone who's going to say, no, you're going to do it my way. You're going to communicate my way. You're going to do the work my way,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't fit who I am.
Yeah. And speaking to that, I won't lie to y'all. There was actually the coach that made fun of affirmations. There were some other red flags that I didn't know about at the time. Um, and that was somebody that I decided to work with because they worked with somebody else that I knew, and I felt like, well, they got great progress and I don't really know anyone else, and I don't even know how I would vet anyone else. So I'll just work with this person because, I know it's a safe, I know it's a safe person because this
Right.
person's worked with them before.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that to yourself,
Don't do that.
especially when the other person is nothing like you, because I guarantee you it's not going to be a match. Do I regret that working with that coach? Absolutely not. It was a really good experience. I did get a lot of great things out of it, but looking back, I can totally recognize that I should have done my due diligence and looked for a coach that was more fitting to what I needed at the time. That
Mm-hmm.
would have been even more effective for me.
Yeah.
Because truth be told, I don't use a lot of the things that I learned with that coach.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them, but not really. But was it great at the time? Absolutely. Did it give me a great source of power and strength that I have
Yeah.
used and carried over? Absolutely. And that's what was so great about that coach.
Yeah.
But I do want to get back to the topic at hand. What's another red flag that you have of someone who is a my way or the highway kind of fake spirituality to look out for?
When they're talking more than you are.
That's such a good
When they're you like you're it, just if they're talking more than you
one.
and you're in a situation where they should be listening to you,
Mhm.
then and that can be anybody. That it
Mhm.
doesn't even have to be a coach. It can be anybody that you're talking to.
Right.
If they're talking more than you are and you're trying to get to know each other, then there's some ego going on.
Especially if it's like a therapist, you gotta
Right.
find a different one.
Or can I do one more and then you can do
Yeah,
one?
yeah, go.
um when they keep telling you stories, like it's like their story, like oh
Personal.
yeah, that happened to me too, oh and when it happened to me and blah 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 blah, blah, and
And
you're
this
like
is what I did, which is
right.
very different than what you did. When you leave a conversation, a session, a video, whatever it is, and you feel judged,
You were judged.
maybe take a look around, see if you feel like that with anyone else.
Yeah.
And then if you feel, because there's a very fine line between feeling judged and being triggered. And I think that needs to not be confused either.
Great
Because
point.
someone judging you is very egotistical, and it's, them having a power trip, power dynamic, versus someone pointing something out to you or mentioning something not even about you that you take personally, feel whatever about. Very, very different things. And that, and I think a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today already, there's a very fine line between, like, I'll call it the positive and the negative side of this.
Right.
And that's where really understanding intuition and feeling energy and those kind of things is so incredibly powerful, because that's where you can figure out which side does it lean on when you're maybe not sure. And if you're not sure, get some more information before you make a decision.
Right.
But usually you can really feel it out.
Yeah. And in your example, one is very much about them
Mm-hmm.
and the trigger is very much about you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that is trying to help you is going to want to help you understand your trigger,
Mm-hmm.
not continue to trigger you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working with someone who by chance happens to know what your triggers are, if they're pushing those buttons to get a reaction out of you, that's also a huge red flag, because that's not having emotional safety with that person, and that's a very bad situation to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there, it's not fun. And so you trust somebody, you share, you tell them like your triggers, your deepest darkest, not deepest darkest secrets, but the things that really can trigger you, can
Mm-hmm.
get a reaction from you. Um and the whole point is to understand what those triggers are and take your power back,
Mm-hmm.
so that when it comes up, going back to the Eleanor Roosevelt saying, which actually I think I read somewhere that she didn't really say it, but
Oh,
everyone
lovely.
everyone gives her credit for it. But
Yeah.
it's no one can make you feel a certain way. You
Inferior
allow
your
it
consent.
to, right. So taking the power away from that trigger is what's the most important part.
Yeah.
And so knowing the difference is also really important. And the bottom line is that if you're confused and you don't know, then ask somebody else for help, or go and have a call with someone else,
Yeah.
listen to someone else. Don't just go by one and
Mhm.
say forget the whole idea. Do your due diligence, do your homework.
Yeah.
And whether it's someone you're following, it's a podcaster, it's doing an interview with a coach, whatever it is, do your due diligence, because no one is the same.
Yeah.
And there's going to be someone right for you
Yeah.
to inspire you.
Yeah. Remind me to bring up, um, in the case of just like watching someone's content, but I do want to say something else related to that
Mhm.
first. I had watched somebody, and I can't recall who it was. I can't think of who it was, but basically they were saying, and it's such a powerful way of looking at this. If someone says a comment to you, they give you feedback, they talk shit, whatever it is, and you have the choice, do I take it personally or not? Well, you shouldn't take it personally because that's coming from somebody else. But what you can do is if you're questioning yourself and you're going, wow, am I really like that? Don't just take it to heart, but turn it into almost like a experiment.
Mhm.
And really and take that comment and go, am I like this? Maybe ask a close friend, maybe ask your partner, whatever it is. And if the answer is no and you've concluded that from yourself, let it go.
Yeah.
And then at that point, someone could say that to you time and time again, and it literally means nothing to you because you know that it's not true.
Yeah.
And I think so often we get caught up in things that people say to us, especially comments online or things said about other people that we take to mean about us because we have that same trait or whatever it is, because we're too afraid to actually look at ourselves and determine, is that true? Because we're afraid that it might be.
Yeah.
But what would be the power if you did look at yourself and you go, wow, you know what? That is true. I know who it was. It was Joe Santagato of the Basement Yard on the Basement Yard episode. He was saying that someone once criticized him about the way he does business, and he took it in, and he said, let me take a look at that.
Mhm.
And he decided, you know what? That doesn't fit who I am. When the person said it to him again, he said, I appreciate that comment, but I know that that's not true. So thank you for the feedback, but I know that that's not right.
Yeah.
And it completely loses its power. And in a day and age like we're in now, where everybody is hypersensitive to so much because we're being exposed to so much,
Mhm.
that is where you take your power back,
Yeah.
is removing the emotion associated with that. And same thing as if you were to work with someone or whatever, and they say something that is, judgmental or triggering or whatever it is. Just take the time to face your fear and look in the mirror and determine, is that actually true?
Yeah.
And then from there, is that something that I can change? Yes? Okay, great. Let me get to what's the next actionable step I can take? And if not, okay, that's who I am. I need to process that and be okay with that and know that that is who I am, and see how you can turn it into a positive for yourself.
And potentially, if that person called you out, hopefully with some tough love, not and nurturing, not, being mean about it, but
But even if they did,
if
all for
they
your highest good.
well, that's true too. And so now you feel that you were seen, right? Like walking around naked, you're being seen.
Yeah.
However, if you don't see it, if you're not brought to see that and put in front of the mirror and said, "Hey, this is what's going on,"
Mm-hmm.
you can't acknowledge it and change it.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, if that were to happen and it was true, if you come to find out that, yeah, I guess I do come off like that, or yeah, there are those times, then you should actually thank that person, and that might be the right person
Yeah.
absolutely for you to work with, because they're not going to let you get away with hiding.
Mm-hmm. Do
So,
you know anybody like that?
no, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
don't know who on earth that would be.
Listen, we all go through it. We all have to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to come to a point where we want to be seen, we want to acknowledge the things that we want to change in
Mm-hmm.
order to get to where we want to go.
Yeah.
But if we're not willing, you cannot force anybody to do the work. The
Mm-hmm.
work, it's not that the work is hard, it's that it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Very. Put it that way.
Uncomfortable, but it's only uncomfortable for that moment of time, and then on the other side of it, you feel calmer.
Yeah.
I talked to a client today, and she was like, my whole week was different and so much more calm and at peace because I did what you suggested.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always happen
Mm-hmm.
if you're not listening to the right people.
Yeah. And it reminds me a lot of the grief process. I was just talking to someone about this last week. When someone or something you love passes away or leaves or whatever it is, there can be that fear of, well, if I start crying, if I let it all out, it's never going to stop. That is the complete opposite of what's actually going to happen. You have to let it all out. And in that concept too, it's just like the process of grief. If you actually go through that moment of uncomfortableness, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter every time until now it's not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's first, it becomes manageable, and then it becomes barely detectable, and then it becomes just, you don't really feel it anymore. And that's when you know that you've made progress. Do you have a comment on that? Because I do want to touch on the video piece I was talking about.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add that, when you're in the dark, once you start to let the light in, the
Mm-hmm.
light will eventually take over.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're sitting in the dark
Mm-hmm.
internally and you're scared and you're afraid to face those things, whatever they are, when you crack the door and the light comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start opening it more and more and more light comes in. And that's where the change happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to find the right path for you to that door, to that person, to whatever it is that you're looking for, so that it's the right path for you.
Yeah. That's actually, again, the perfect segue. Because one of the things I wanted to mention too is, so we've talked a lot about when it's someone that you're going to be interacting with, but I
Mm-hmm.
also want to touch on the my way or the highway, fake
Mm-hmm.
spirituality of someone that, everyone's a content creator these days. So how can you determine if someone is legitimate, if someone is whatever? And one of the things that you can look for is someone who, and this is such a buzzword, but the
Tell us
toxic,
how you really feel.
yeah, the toxic positivity thing. If someone that you are listening to, you're watching their content, you're reading their content, whatever it is, if they are trying to say that every single moment of your day should be positive thoughts, every single moment, like you should just only be feeling positive all the time, that's not healthy. That's not human. I understand
That's
the
not
concept.
living.
I understand the concept of 5D, 6D, so all the different dimensions and raising your vibration and all of those things. But the reality is that we're still humans in a 3D reality,
Right.
maybe teetering on the line of 4D, depending on your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
To be human is to feel a roller coaster of emotions. To
Yes.
feel only positive all the time is denying yourself the full experience that is being a human. And it's also just unrealistic, and can actually make someone feel even worse, because when those negative emotions do rush in, they think, well, something must be wrong with me. And it's something that I still struggle with to this day,
Yeah.
is when I do have these negative feelings and I get in a negative loop of thoughts, I have to literally physically stop in my mind, go stop and redirect myself. And
Yeah.
so if you're heavily subscribing to somebody who is just constantly reiterating that you have to be positive 24/7,
Yeah.
that is the only way to progress in your spiritual journey or whatever journey you're on, that's not how it works.
No, that's the opposite. That's
Right.
faking it till you make it, which was back in the 80s and the 90s, like the cool thing.
Yeah.
Like fake it till
Because
you make it.
here's the thing. Think about places where the sun is out 24/7. You know what those places look like? Unless it's like Antarctica or like the North Pole. Those places it's very dry and it's very hot. Your life, there'll be no sustenance. You got to have night
Yeah.
to not only appreciate the day, but also to provide some relief and whatever. I mean, that's kind of the opposite of sun and day, but either way, the point is you have to have dark to appreciate the light. It's all about balance.
Yes.
Life is about duality. So if someone that you're subscribing to, that you're watching their stuff, is all about positive, 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 yes, it's good to expose yourself to positive
Mm-hmm.
messaging. That helps you motivate yourself and all those things, but it's not the only way to do things.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that it's actually about being able to come into a place of being.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where we're supposed to function from,
Mm-hmm.
is from the moment right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why I do moment of presence. It's being present in that moment
Mm-hmm.
and then responding, whether it's positive or staying neutral, because even a negative, you don't know if it's a negative yet.
Yeah.
How many things, and hello, cancer, how many things have happened that we think is like super negative, and
Yeah.
then years later, and sometimes it does take years, that you look back and you go, oh, now I understand why that happened.
Yeah.
My corporate life, now I totally understand why all of that happened. I would not have been able to make it in healthcare when all of the regulations came out,
Right.
because I know my values, because I know how I function. I would not have been able to function in that world.
Yeah.
And so when you look at things from a neutral place,
Mm-hmm.
from that moment that you're in it, and go, okay, good, bad, good, bad, who knows?
Yeah.
We learned that from another lovely coach, that, and it's good, bad, who knows? Because you don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's the part of enlightenment and spirituality, is there is a bigger plan, whether you designed it before you came here, whether God knows it, who, whatever you believe, there is a bigger plan.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big picture.
Mm-hmm.
You can't always see it if you're focusing on the one little mosquito on your front window shield,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much more. And
Yeah.
so being in the moment is where you want to be. And then, it all goes back to like what Abraham Hicks teaches. You can't know if it's good if you don't know what the bad feels like.
Yeah.
It's two sides of the stick and you get to choose which one. But if you've never allowed yourself the depth of negativity or something that you don't want, how are you supposed to know what you do want? And
Yeah.
so, like that coach, like you were talking about, you learned a lot because you learned of what doesn't work and what does work.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Um, a couple other things with people whose content you're going to be watching. Another big, 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 big red flag is anyone that tells you you shouldn't look into other things.
Oh,
And this was very, very popular with the incident that happened starting in 2020. Was there was a big movement of like, you shouldn't look into things, trust the blank, you shouldn't look further than this, what I'm telling you is the right thing.
yeah.
Anyone who says that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to blatantly say don't trust them.
Right.
If you are told not to look elsewhere, not to do your own research,
Yeah.
immediately cut yourself off from that person. That is not
And do your own research.
correct. That is not human nature. That is not a safe way to exist. That is not how humans grow. That's not how civilization grows. That's not even how the scientific method works.
Yeah.
Science is question everything. Um, and another thing that I wanted to mention too is on the flip side of it, if there is someone who, we know of somebody who we've heard horror stories about this person, and yet I love their content. They
Mm-hmm.
put out very motivational stuff that really resonates with me. Not even motivational, just the way that they deliver information is very effective for me. It helps me take it in and it's spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Do I know personally maybe they've got some stuff going on? Sure, that's cool.
Who
So
doesn't?
you also right, and that I mean that takes it back to being a human being. But just because everybody is looking at someone telling stories about someone, um, maybe the comments on a video are people talking smack. If it resonates with you and it helps you,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. You can proceed with
Right.
that. And that also goes to, well, how do I know if this person is a good person or not? How do I know if there's red flags? If you're just taking in someone's content, you're not necessarily paying for something, or maybe it's a small amount, test it out. See if you like their method, test it out. Unless you have some like really serious issue where it could be like a life or death situation, maybe not. But if we're
Right.
talking just general like spirituality, life, like internal work, whatever, test it out.
Mm-hmm.
And especially right now where everything is so inundated with information, give yourself the time to only focus on one person's method at a time. I'm not contradicting myself in the sense that I just said don't look elsewhere, but I'm saying if you are going to follow something, give yourself the due diligence to stick with just that for a week, 2 weeks, ideally like a month is generally how long it takes. But that way you don't have a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person, a little bit of that person, a little bit of that person. With that being said, maybe there's something you really don't like and throw that out. So it's a little bit, it's a weird situation, but you don't have to count someone out just because other people don't like them.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like there's a lot more red flags we can go through.
Yeah, probably.
Well, we may have to continue this conversation, or maybe what we'll do is bring it into our upcoming, conspiracy, or
Mm,
that's going to be a really, really fun show.
it'd be
I
interesting.
can't wait for that one.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure when we're doing it, but I'm already
I
like,
think I might bump that one up.
yeah, I think you might have to.
Mhm.
So yeah, Krista, where can people find you?
Great question. So, if you are a small business entrepreneur, coach, someone that needs operational help, medium sized business, anyone that needs operational help or fractional COO, go to wickedwisdomconsulting.com. It's right up there at the top. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And, even if you're not sure if I could be helpful, I actually have a post about that coming out Wednesday. Let's have a conversation. I do free consultations. There's usually always a few spots open. I try to make it as accommodating to people because I know schedules are flexible.
Mhm.
But let's just have a conversation, because even if I can't help you, I'm sure people who have been on consults with me before would tell you I still, give you feedback, give you ideas, whatever it is on the call. And I literally have had at least 2 or 3 calls in the last couple of weeks where I have literally told people, like, you know what? It's really not the right time for you for us to work together, but here's what I want you to work on.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do. Because helping small businesses, as you saw, I plugged even my mug gals. Um, I love small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of America. They're the backbone of freedom as a free citizen. And it is so important to me that I am able to help people live their dream and live their purpose.
Yeah.
Um, so if that's you, or you're, again, in a larger size business, that's cool too. wickedwisdomconsulting.com. What about you, Michelle?
I love that. So yes, mokshagrace.com is right above here. And you can, listen, if you want to just talk, even if you've talked to a couple other coaches, you're not sure if you want a coach, if you need a coach, just call me. I'm going to give you, honest feedback, because I don't want to work with someone who isn't ready. Also, if we're not a fit, I'm going to let you know. But if we are, we're gonna work something out. We're gonna, come to a determination of how long and what that's gonna look like. I don't do cookie cutter programs. I do intuitive, where I
Which is
talk to you,
huge.
which is huge, because I'm looking at you, your objectives, and how, and I take into consideration your background, and then I map it out for you. So that way we have a plan moving forward that fits who you are and where you want to be. So yeah, book a call and we'll have an open, honest conversation. A lot of people jump on the phone with me, they don't get started, but then they call me back a couple months later and they're like, oh my god, that was like such a huge change for me. Where can I get more? So there's a lot more coming up. I'm working on something for this summer that's going to
I
be
was
really
just gonna
fun.
say, make sure you follow and subscribe to her Facebook and LinkedIn, because there's shockingly, I help her with her operations as her fractional COO, and I can tell you, inside scoop, there's gonna be a bunch of like free resources and stuff that we start launching and putting out there. So follow her on Facebook and LinkedIn primarily. Instagram's wonky with the links, which is at Moksha Grace Coaching usually, or Moksha Grace, but you'll find it. We'll
Yeah.
link it.
We make it very easy to be found. And so just to reiterate, look for your red flags. Don't just go with someone because someone else, told you that they would be great for you, because you're not that same person. And so make sure it's the right
Correct.
person for you. If it makes you feel like there's something not right, if you're retracting from the person, that's not the person for you. And what were the other things?
Toxic
Oh,
positivity,
if
no
they're talking,
bending,
right, if they're talking
no,
too much.
yeah, talking too much. And if you want to, run stuff by us, comment comment in the comments if there's someone that you're trying to figure out if they're legit or not, if they're good, if they have any red flags or not. Just post a story and we'll read it and give you some feedback.
You don't have to say their name though.
No. Yeah, we're not
do that.
we're not trying to.
Don't
Yeah,
do that. No, don't do that. But definitely let us know. And if you want to, in info@mokshagrace.com, you can always send us a private email as well. So lots of information. We may have to do like a bullet pointed summary and put it on both of our webpages.
No, you guys can watch this and take your own notes. Take what resonates and leave the rest.
That's true.
We'll probably do a part 2 at some point, but in the meantime, we've got some more awesome topics. And if anyone has caught on, maybe not, because we only did it once or twice at this point, but we're trying to incorporate like movie lines in our titles. Today's isn't really, although Life is a Highway is
that was a movie. It was Cars.
Rascal Flatts, come on now.
Life is a highway.
On that note, we'll see you next week, guys. Make sure to subscribe and leave your comment. Let us know you're watching, and we'll see you next week.
And Moment of Presence is tomorrow.